Hi everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. Passover 101, The Great Escape. This program is dedicated by Shoshana Grosbard in honor of Chaim Zaya Yehoshua Grosbard. Would you believe that this year will be 3,337 years from when the Exodus from Egypt took place, where the Jewish people marched out after over 2 centuries of bondage and slavery under the Egyptians, marched out on what is known as the Exodus, has become already immortalized. Firstly, of course, the story in the Bible, but it's also become part of even modern cinema. Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, Prince of Egypt. It's part of culture. Maybe one of the most famous stories of all, and one that many have identified with the abolition of slavery in the 19th century. American blacks who were enslaved identified very much with the story of Exodus from Egypt, as did the founding fathers, ironically, as they established this country, the United States of America, to the point that they even considered Hebrew to maybe be the national language, and other symbolism that they saw, they identified with, as they freed themselves, what they considered to be slavery and bondage under King George of Great Britain. And throughout history, this would be the first institutionalized both slavery and emancipation and freedom. 3,337 years to be exact. Which tells you something. You know, stories that endure, events that last, become timeless, means they have a message for us that's also timeless. Though it happened at a certain point in history, many things that have happened that may be documented in books, in history books, but it doesn't continue to be honored and celebrated. Here, in Jewish homes around the world, this coming Saturday night, there will be the celebration of the famous Passover Seder. The Passover Haggadah will be read, a booklet that is read and celebrated by families with children, being at the center of it all, the famous 4 questions, Manishtana. And it's also become part of, you can even say, secular culture in a way. I mean, Christianity, very much born out of Judaism, also focuses on what they call the Last Supper, which everyone knows is a Passover Seder. The point being is that this has some type of eternal message, which I'd like to talk about. The Great Escape, an interesting way of putting it. But think of it, let's talk about freedom, because in many ways this holiday is called the Festival of Freedom. Now, what is freedom? What is freedom? You know, many people would define freedom. Let's go back to the founding fathers of this country, a free country, the first country that constitutionally and institutionally established freedom. So freedom was the Bill of Rights. The right, the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression and the freedom of press, the freedom of assembly, the different freedoms that we experience. And that is our birthright, that all men are created equal, and we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with the inalienable rights. Up to that point in history, the world, everywhere in the world, was controlled by individuals, by monarchs, by despots, by cruel ones and sometimes benevolent ones, by the church. I mean, there were different ways that control was exerted, but freedom, the idea of freedom, that you as an individual are created equal, that you have rights that are absolutely divine and are your birthright, nobody can take them from you, that in the world is only 248 years old. However, it all began 3,337 years ago. So freedom, let's define freedom. Many people would say, freedom means I can do whatever I like. That's this common expression. Ask any person in the street. I can do what I like. I'm not in prison. Nobody's holding a gun up to my head. I can do what I like. But is that truly freedom? Many people feel this has freed us. Smartphone. Many feel enslaved by it. So it definitely has provided us with many, many benefits and blessings. You can be free and not be behind bars and not be bound by any shackles or ball and chain, and yet be addicted to all kinds of things, to behaviors, to substances, to drugs, to alcohol, to gambling, to sex, and other forms that do enslave you. True freedom is actually, you have to think of it from a psychological, emotional point of view. It's not just physical movement. There are many people who may be sitting in one place and not move, but they're free and their spirits are free. There are other people that are running here and there, and they seem to be free spirits, but they're just running out of fear and insecurity. So freedom is actually psychological freedom. And actually, one of the great sages, the Maharal of Prague, says that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they didn't just leave physically. They developed for the first time a psychological freedom. They would never be able to be enslaved again, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. Because remember, again, you can be free physically, but still psychologically enslaved, bound, feel the pressure, that's whether it's from parents or whether it's society or it's peers, and you feel that you have to respond to them. How many of us are driven by what other people's expectations are? How many of us still have never developed a true ability to spread our wings in fear that we'll be judged, we'll be criticized? Growing up in a home where parents criticize, invalidated, does not develop exactly a type of freedom emotionally to be able to have that self-confidence and self-esteem to do whatever you wish. So true freedom is actually finding a place that nothing outside of you imposes itself upon you. It's you expressing yourself. You're singing your song. So really it's about finding yourself. That's what it really comes down to. And perhaps that was one of the experiences that they went through back then, over 3 millennia ago, because up to that point, you can say a human being was a victim, or at least a product, of circumstances, a victim of their society, social pressure, parental pressure, your own subjectivity, feeling the need to please others. All that adds up to a human being that's not truly free. And what they needed to experience was a true hitting rock bottom. And the word for Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means constraints, limits, inhibitions, fears, insecurities. Fill in the blanks. Anything that blocks you, anything that impedes your ability to be yourself, to sing your song, to speak with your voice, is a form of Mitzrayim, is a form of slavery. And true freedom is freeing yourself from those shackles. Those shackles are invisible. They don't look like chains. You can even convince yourself that I can do whatever I like. I'm free. That's what it really comes down to. So it's a tremendous opportunity to experience something, perhaps for the first time in your life, to sing your song, to be yourself. But to do so, you first have to identify that other forces that are stopping you from being that. And you may not even recognize them. We can be such conformists to the point you don't even realize that you're just following a herd mentality. So the first step is to stop yourself. What do I mean by stop? Create space. Begin to think about your life. What are your political opinions like? And where do they come from? Now, we all like to believe you really did the research and you've thought it through and you've heard all the different perspectives and you've come to certain conclusions. Well, if you're honest, you start asking yourself, is that true? And I speak about myself as well. My first opinions were formed in life, in my parents' home, what I heard from them. Do I continue just to follow what they said or their way of saying things? Or have I challenged it? You may challenge it and come to the conclusion that they're correct, But you have to always challenge yourself. That's the first freedom. If you don't challenge yourself, if you're not able in your own mind, forget about someone else, to take an opinion, a position on something and say, what is the contrary position? How do I know that's true? Maybe it's exactly opposite. I'll use a controversial example. I love President Trump, whatever he does. But maybe he made a mistake. I hate President Trump. Everything he does is wrong. But maybe that's a mistake. And we find in our society today, look how difficult it is to do that. Two people can't even have a discussion on these matters. Freedom is the ability to have that dialogue. Not even getting to the conclusion, just the ability to talk. And that's why you find, what is the Seder, the Passover Seder experience? It's called Haggadah, a booklet called Haggadah. You know what Haggadah means? To tell the story, to speak up the narrative. And it begins in the process of a questions and answers. We encourage our children, not just adults. Children, you could say they should just be listening to what the adults have to say. No, let the children begin by asking questions. Encourage them to ask questions. Encourage them to challenge in a respectful way, in a civil manner, but to challenge the status quo. Definitely not to remain silent. And those that are silent, open their mouths. Encourage them, inspire them. Give them the confidence. You're allowed to ask questions. Not only you're allowed to, you must ask questions, which is one of the first signs of a true freedom and expression. And you'll see all those that enslave others, the first slavery is not putting them into a labor camp. It's to silence them. It's to control their minds through the media, through propaganda, etc. So we talk about making it relevant in our time. That's the first freedom we need, the ability to think differently. Think out of the box. You have a certain perspective? Fine. Can you listen to another one? Or if it's different than your perspective, it has to be wrong. And furthermore, not only can't you hear another perspective, you have to character assassinate the person who has the other perspective. But if you're really so confident, why do someone else have to be wrong for you to be right? Stand by your position. Let someone else articulate their position. As soon as you see anyone silencing others, canceling them, dismissing them outright, calling them names instead of listening to their opinion, that's not freedom. That's slavery. That's just one manifestation of it. Obviously, it also goes back to our own psychological freedom, which is, can you build confidence in yourself and in your voice, or do you need always someone else to tell you what to do? And what do you think the difference between a leader and a follower is? A leader is someone that does not wait, is not reactive to others and just say, okay, tell me what to say, but someone that initiates, that's proactive. Now, if you're not confident yet to be proactive, do research. Study. If you don't have an opinion yet, listen to the other opinions. Now, we're all subjective. We all have biases. We all have prejudices. But the key thing is not that whether you're subjective, whether you're aware of it, and whether you're ready to ask yourself, maybe there's a different perspective. I happen to like to listen to videos or to people who don't agree with me, and sometimes adamantly of a very different perspective. Not because necessarily they'll change my mind. They may not. But I want to see what they think, because I think that is what a wise person does. You want to hear different perspectives. And then on the contrary, then you could say, okay, I heard what the competition has to say. What's my response? Very often when we have a meeting in my office, and let's say I come up with a good idea, or I think it's a good idea. I present it to our team, or someone else comes up with an idea. And then I always will do one thing. Not immediately, once you present the idea, say, and what happens if we do the exact opposite of that idea? And people say, 1 second, you came up with a good idea. Why are you now undermining it? I say, I'm not undermining. Let's stretch our minds. Let's expand this. Let's look at it every angle. Don't just marry to it. Don't get married to it and own and feel that now there's no other way to go. You always want to look at the opposite approach and then come back and say, you know what? The opposite approach is not as good as this approach. But establish that. Make a case for it. And for that, it has to be challenged. And then when you make a case, then it becomes far more crystal clear. It crystallizes because you have stretched it. And you can look back and say, we did explore different options. That's why it's good to go to a contrarian. And I'm not talking about someone who just is a contrarian just to always argue. But someone who will look at your thing, dissect it, pick it apart and say, here are some of the flaws. Here's some of the strengths. Here's another way of looking at it. And you may often come back and realize that your original idea may be good, but now you have to tweak it. You have to reshape it, refine it. That's called trial and error. That's called evaluating. You can test it and then see. That's the way a healthy, free person lives and thinks. And I'm just using some examples. The same as we have different opinions. Spouses may disagree, parents and children, individuals, friends, strangers, communities, countries. The sign of freedom is them able to hear and listen to another perspective, and they say, I don't agree with you. And I'll tell you why. And not just to dig in because you can't, because your pride as saving face is more important than anything. Because you have listened and come away and say, here's the case I have to make. And hopefully the other party can do the same, and you both can come away with something much deeper, much greater. Maybe something that both of you didn't think of. A new synergy that's developed when you hear contrary opinions. But all across the board in every area of life, this is critical, because it means that the biggest trap, the biggest Mitzrayim, the biggest slavery is enslaved to your own ego and to your own interests, not allowing you, blinding you from seeing another's interest, to seeing another perspective, to seeing a bigger perspective. Let's be honest. All healing, especially psychological, emotional, begins by getting yourself out of the way, not being your own worst enemy, because that's the worst enemy. Yeah, well, my problem, they're not so bad. I'm not really addicted. Someone else's fault. Not even getting into narcissism and sociopathic behavior. It's about looking at yourself honestly. And yes, honesty comes into play here. And I go back to the children, because the children help us be honest if you allow them to. Not if you try to have them conform to your opinions, forcing yourself upon them, imposing your thoughts, but allowing them to breathe, allowing them to express, allowing them to imagine, to dream. So everyone gets enriched in the process. So the great escape is actually not an escape. Escapism sounds like desperation, escaping the enemy. The great escape is actually the great freedom, the ability to free yourself from the subjective and biased and distorted perspectives that don't allow us to grow. Getting out of the status quo, getting out of your comfort zone, and in the process reaching unprecedented heights. And it's within reach of each one of us if you access your soul. See, your body can get trapped in its routines, in its habits, in its mechanical behavior. The soul is the one with the wings, the one that soars, the one that transcends. Another name for Passover, transcending. The transcendence of your own ego, of your own emotional subjectivity, of your limited perspectives, allowing yourself to see a bigger picture. That's what this story is about. And that's why this Passover story is so enduring. Because this is the essence of the human condition. Seeking, longing, transcending. Reaching to something greater than our own little box, our own little narrow, myopic vision. So 3,337 years ago, indeed, a historic event took place, and it continues to take place every day, every moment, every year, every generation. What we need to do is to access that energy. Because every year, time is like a cycle, like a spiral. Every year, that the Passover evening and the Passover holiday, which will begin, as I said, next Saturday night, 8 days. In Israel, it's 7 days. that energy is recreated on a new plane, on a new dimension. But that freedom energy, that transcendent energy, that ability to go and reach these new and unprecedented heights. So take advantage of it. And this is universal. If you're Jewish, I would definitely encourage you to go to a Seder. But whether you're Jewish or not, the Passover energy is experienced for every person. And it gives you the ability to do things you haven't done before. And that lies right within you, right within your soul. But access your soul. Have the courage. Dare to dare. And you will see new vistas open up, new possibilities. May you and your loved ones and everyone be blessed with a true freeing and transcendent holiday, and one that we carry on, that continues on and perpetuates through the whole year. And may that have a real impact and bear true fruit, perpetual fruit, on this ailing world which suffers so much from the inability to do exactly that, to be able to breathe and grow and recognize that we're all part of one greater reality, all part of a cosmic symphony, each of us playing our music, our song, complementing each other and each one necessary, but not by obliterating or annihilating the other, by recognizing everyone's free spirit and how when they all come together it creates this beautiful music. Be blessed, very happy, freeing, meaningful and transcendent Passover to all. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Please subscribe if you've enjoyed this to our offerings. MeaningfulLife.com. Subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. Please share with others. It's the ultimate gift. And please, I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback and comments, no matter what they are, whether they agree with what I've said or not. It all is welcome and cherished. Thank you so much. I'll also use this opportunity, being that it's a holiday season, to ask if you feel these teachings are important, to please partner with us, both in spreading them, but also financially. Your money goes directly toward growing and developing new such programming. We're now beginning to use AI, foreign languages. Go to simonjacobson.ai for a taste of either chatting with me virtually or texting, as well as MLC Global in different languages. But above all, go to meaningfullife.com/donate, and any gift is welcome. Thank you so much, and be well and be blessed.